Heyo, welcome back to Cartoon Mania. Today we've got a complete rundown of the show The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, from its humble beginnings to the grand finale. The series unfolds in the fictional and delightfully strange harbor town of Stormalong, a place teeming with eccentric and sometimes downright oddball characters. Right at the center of the story is a young boy named Flapjack, who's been raised by none other than a talking whale named Bubby. Flapjack's got this unwavering dream of becoming a top-notch adventurer and sailor, and his ultimate hero is a pirate named Captain Knuckles. So without further waiting, let's dive into the intricacies of this mind-boggling show. A few years before the show began, Bubby, the talking whale, was taking a swim across the ocean when she came across a bundle of seaweed. Inside that bundle was a small baby with sparkly eyes. She instantly fell in love with the little thing and decided to raise him on her own in the Stormalong harbor. Speaking of the place, Stormalong Harbor takes the spotlight as the primary setting in the marvelous misadventures of Flapjack. It's a bustling port city that Flapjack and his pals call home. Now, when it comes to consistency, let's just say that Stormalong Harbor doesn't play by the rules. In one episode, you get this bird's eye view of the place, and it looks like it's barely bigger than the ships docked there. But then, out of the blue, we're introduced to Upper Stormalong in an episode called The Sweet Life, showing that Stormalong can host a neighborhood full of grand manors, some even with their very own private gardens. As for how grass manages to grow and be kept up on the docks, well, that's a mystery that's never quite explained. And if that's not enough, Stormalong's got this intricate and extensive sewer system. Even though the harbor seems to be completely above sea level, it's a place where the laws of reality tend to take a backseat. Now let's talk about some of the main characters of the show. Bubby. She's not just your average talking whale. She's like a motherly figure to Flapjack, and while she can be incredibly sweet to him, she can also be pretty darn fierce when it comes to safeguarding her little one, especially from the not-so-great influence of Captain Knuckles. But don't worry, we'll dive deeper into that later. Now here's a real eye-opener. Flapjack and Captain Knuckles actually live inside Bubby's mouth, like right on her tongue. It's not just their home, it also peels back the layers to something rather mysterious and maybe even a tad sinister about Bubby herself. To unravel Bubby's mysterious secret, let's set our sights on the episode Bubby's Tummy Ache. In a flashback, we get a glimpse of a young Bubby taking part in a pie-eating contest. It's not exactly a fair match for a full-grown whale, and she easily snags the victory. But it's right here that her obsession with pies rears its head. Despite winning the competition, she can't seem to get enough of those delectable treats. Then, by a stroke of luck, she catches wind of a woman named Ruth, who was a culinary sensation at the time, baking pies for eligible bachelors. All the guys were vying to marry her, and she was just about to pick a husband when Bubby, drawn by the irresistible scent of pies, breaks into her bakery and devours everything. I'm talking pies and Ruth included. Fast forward decades, and Ruth is still residing inside Bubby. But one day, Flapjack and Knuckles stumble upon her while exploring the depths of Bubby's insides and manage to bring her out. Even though she's aged, the sailors around the harbor still recognize her and are just as smitten as they were back in the day. It's a wacky tale that makes you wonder what other surprises Stormalong Harbor has in store. Now let's set our sights on the most intriguing characters of them all, Captain Knuckles himself. He boldly proclaims to be the greatest pirate in the world, but when it comes to his stories, you're never quite sure if he's spinning a tale of truth or just plain old-fashioned lies. Captain Knuckles kicks off his stories right from the earliest memories he can recall. He shares a tale from his school days, where his supposed friend handed out the last of his birthday party invitations to the teacher instead of him. This early experience hints at how he felt neglected during his school years and goes a long way to explaining why he eventually gave up on attending school altogether. When it comes to Captain Knuckles' parents, he spins quite the fantastical yarn. According to him, they were transformed into seagulls by a mischievous genie. But long before that peculiar twist, he recounts a tale from his childhood. He remembers his mother telling him about a traditional low tides day, where folks would hang their boots in the water, and the following day, they'd discover a gift inside. Young Knuckles gave it a shot, but to his dismay, his boot remained empty. He soon learned that, as the story goes, naughty kids didn't get presents. Instead, they were subject to a peculiar punishment. They'd be snatched up by the merman. Knuckles recounts losing one of his hands to a food processor when he was just a youngster. To get himself back in working order, he decided to carve a new hand out of wood. But here's where it gets especially quirky. He ended up carving a mirror image of the hand he actually needed. So to set things right, he went the extra mile and amputated his perfectly fine working hand and carved himself a second wooden hand. I mean, it might sound bizarre, but the good news is that both his prosthetic hands work like a charm, allowing Knuckles to carry on with his adventures just like someone with real hands. As he grew up, Knuckles set his sights on becoming a pirate and began working on a ship. But here's the catch. He was just a little kid surrounded by a crew of tough, macho men who not only bullied him, but eventually kicked him off the ship. But despite the setbacks, Knuckles' spirit remained unbroken, and he persevered by working for another ship captain. The trouble was, Knuckles had a knack for being lousy at sailing, and he never managed to secure his license. He firmly believed that the captain held a grudge against them for not issuing the license, but in a surprising turn of events, the captain was actually quite understanding and wanted to assist them. The captain asked Knuckles to open up about his feelings, but instead of a heartfelt conversation, Knuckles threw a raging fit and ended up sinking the ship. He made his escape on a small boat, leaving behind a trail of chaos and a befuddled captain. It's just one of the many quirky chapters in Captain Knuckles' adventurous life story. Captain Knuckles spills the beans about a time before he crossed paths with Flapjack and Bubby. He shares a story of his previous acquaintance with another boy named Tuppence and a whale. In a peculiar turn of events, he once sent Tuppence inside the whale's stomach to retrieve a watch he'd lost. But as fate would have it, that ended up being the last time he ever laid eyes on Tuppence. When it comes to love, Captain Knuckles didn't have much luck either. His romantic escapades took quite a few awkward turns, like that time when he was smooching what he thought was the most beautiful woman in the harbor, only to open his eyes and realize he was kissing himself. The lady had ditched him, deeming him too ugly, and the whole crowd had a good laugh at his expense. And then there was the time he tried to be a gentleman and offer his umbrella to a lady during a thunderstorm, only to get struck by lightning right away. He even made an effort to be complimentary to some witches, but that landed him a jolt of electricity for his troubles. All these misadventures helped shape him into the carefree scallywag he is today. But beneath that rough exterior, you can't help but to see the wounded child who had a pretty tough go of it in his early years. Captain Knuckles spins quite the yarn, insisting that he lost nearly his entire body during his wild adventures as a captain. And there might be more truth to his tale than you'd expect. In the episode Gone Wishin', he stumbles upon an opportunity to transform back into his human form, complete with all his original limbs, thanks to a mermaid's heart. Although we only catch a brief glimpse of his human self in that moment, it's definitely a sight to behold. It adds a whole new layer of intrigue to Captain Knuckles and his mysterious past. And as for Flapjack, he is a spirited young lad who's fueled by a boundless enthusiasm for adventure. He's a real ball of energy and thrives on forming new connections and friendships. But here's the twist. Flapjack is highly impressionable, particularly when it comes to his idol, Knuckles. He places unwavering trust in Knuckles and tends to follow his every word without much hesitation. This youthful zeal also means he's somewhat naive, there's lurking around him, which lands him in precarious situations. Because of his tender age and trusting nature, he can easily fall prey to those who take advantage of his kindness and innocence. Flapjack encounters a girl named Sally Syrup at the market who is selling seashells. When he listens to a seashell from Blood Island, he hears a loud screeching noise. Intrigued, Flapjack tries to get to know Sally better, but Knuckles intervenes and drags him away, claiming that being in love is the worst problem a sailor can have. Knuckles takes Flapjack to the candy barrel and explains that love can be a distraction from adventure. Peppermint Larry notices the love hearts popping out of Flapjack and decides to turn them into candy, which he names Sweethearts. These Sweethearts become incredibly popular in Stormalong. Knuckles pushes Flapjack to create more love hearts and forces him to engage in various romantic activities. Peppermint Larry and Knuckles trick Sally into coming to the candy barrel for a date with Flapjack. When Sally realizes that Flapjack is in love with her, she's disgusted but still agrees to help him escape. Meanwhile, Dr. Barber discovers that the Sweethearts are actually blood gnats, and chaos erupts in the candy barrel. Knuckles tries to check on Flapjack but finds out that he and Sally have fled. Flapjack and Sally manage to escape and find the Blood Island Queen inside the shell Flapjack used. They lure the blood gnats onto a ship, allowing Sally to return them to Blood Island. As the ship departs, Flapjack and Sally part on good terms, not in love with each other. Back at Stormalong, Knuckles apologizes to Flapjack and offers to let him wear his captain's hat. A love heart emerges from Knuckles' head, and he tells Flapjack it's a blood gnat. Despite that, as he walks away, Knuckles sees Candy Wife in the crowd, hinting at his own feelings. Then one day, Knuckles leaves a piece of stolen candy in a dish as an offering to the mysterious comb stranger in hopes of receiving a free comb. When Flapjack learns that no one has ever seen the comb stranger, he decides to wait by the dish all night. Much to their surprise, the comb stranger who introduces himself as Tee Tummy Tums finally appears. However, Flapjack accidentally makes him drop his candy, and in a kind gesture, he offers his own candy to Tee Tummy Tums. Tee Tummy Tums, moved by Flapjack's generosity, takes him to meet his family and agrees to help him sell combs. Their efforts to sell combs in Stormalong Harbor prove challenging because Tee Tummy Tums always keeps a bag over his head, which unsettles people. Desperate to make a sale, Flapjack takes him to Dr. Barber, who agrees to purchase combs but under the condition that Tee Tummy Tums reveals his face. To everyone's surprise, Tee Tummy Tums turns out to be incredibly handsome, and people are captivated by his looks rather than his combs. They begin to pester him to see his face, which wasn't what he wanted. In response, Tee Tummy Tums decided to leave Stormalong with his family as he wants to be loved for his combs, not his handsome appearance. It's a bittersweet lesson about the superficiality of people's judgments and the importance of being appreciated for who you are on the inside, rather than just outward appearances.
It's dangerous and risky.
Another memorable character in this quirky world is Peppermint Larry, who, alongside his unconventional candy wife, runs the Candy Barrel Bar. Now, what makes the Candy Barrel so unique is that it serves up candy, pouring it from the tap into beer mugs, as though it were the finest liquor. Flapjack and Captain Knuckles are frequent patrons, but they usually hightail it out of there before the bill comes due. The Candy Barrel attracts sailors from all corners of the world and is a hotspot in almost every episode of the show. In Stormalong Harbor, Dr. Barber is known for his peculiar character, juggling multiple roles as the local doctor, surgeon, and barber. He runs a unique setup with a barbershop and a doctor's office side by side, often playfully messing with his patients just for fun. However, Dr. Barber faced a low point when he felt that nobody needed his surgical skills anymore. In a surprising turn of events, Flapjack, always resourceful, crafted a candy friend for Dr. Barber, and the two quickly bonded. Dr. Barber decided to leave Stormalong with his new candy colleague, believing he was no longer needed in town. However, as they were about to depart, the townspeople suddenly required urgent surgeries. Dr. Barber refused, determined to leave with Candy Colleague. This decision didn't sit well with the townsfolk, and they turned against Candy Colleague, wanting him gone. They sought refuge with Peppermint Larry, but suspicions about Candy Colleague's intentions caused Larry to hand him over to the angry mob. In the end, Flapjack had to eat the Candyman to resolve the issue. Beneath all the humor and hijinks, there is actually a central storyline in the show, and it's all about a legendary place called the Candied Island. This island is a sugary paradise made entirely of candy, and it's the dream of both Captain Knuckles and Flapjack to find it. Their quest to locate this sweet heaven leads them on a series of uproarious and occasionally perilous adventures. So buckle up, because we're about to dive into their whimsical and at times treacherous journey. While exploring Bubby's mouth, Knuckles stumbles upon a treasure map that he believes leads to Candied Island. However, he can't read the map and wakes up Flapjack to help him decipher it. Flapjack initially offers to read it, but suddenly pretends to be blind, worrying about catching his blindness. They visit Dr. Barber, thinking Flapjack needs medical attention, but the doctor reveals that Flapjack is not blind, but just needs a haircut. During the visit, Dr. Barber learns about the treasure map and steals it from Knuckles. Dr. Barber and his crew set sail for Candied Island, leaving Flapjack and Knuckles behind. Knuckles and Flapjack head out to sea on Bubby to find Dr. Barber and retrieve the stolen map. With Bubbles' help, they create a distraction and board Dr. Barber's ship. With the map now accessible, Flapjack reads it and reveals that it leads to the treasure of friendship rather than Candied Island. Then, this one time, Knuckles and Flapjack dress up as sardines to stow away on a ship they believe is headed to the Candied Island. Bubby, who is actually a whale and not a fish, doesn't fit into the ship and stays behind. However, the ship doesn't take them to their desired destination, Candied Island. Instead, it lands on Cammy Island. On Cammy Island, they encounter an ogress named Cammy, who initially threatens to attack them. Flapjack, with his keen eye, notices that Cammy has a bow in her hair and a bra strap under her clothing, realizing that she's a girl. This observation changes Cammy's demeanor, and she befriends Flapjack. The two have fun playing in the mud and discovering and eating scrambled eggs, while Knuckles works on building rafts to escape the island. Knuckles attempts to construct 3 rafts, one made of fish, which gets eaten by a shark, one made of bananas, also eaten by a sea monkey, and finally one made of wood. Once the wooden raft is complete, Knuckles and Flapjack sneak away while Cammy is sleeping. However, Cammy wakes up upset that they left her behind on a poorly built raft. She chases them to the edge of a cliff, where it seems Flapjack is in serious trouble. Surprisingly, Cammy's fury subsides and she gives them a well-constructed boat with a bow on it to sail back to Stormalong Harbor. In this episode, it's Flapjack's birthday and he receives a pencil from Bubby as a gift. Flapjack playfully draws a face on his foot and pretends that it's sentient, making a dance in the ocean with the fish. Knuckles, who initially tries to teach Flapjack how to use a compass, eventually succumbs to Flapjack's enthusiasm for adventure. Flapjack becomes determined to sail to the west, believing it might lead them to Candied Island, despite Knuckles' warnings about sea monsters and curses associated with the west. As they sail westward, strange and dangerous occurrences happen due to mentioning the word west. They encounter sea monsters and run low on resources like food and water. Bubby decides it's time to turn back, but Flapjack builds a raft to continue their journey, much to Knuckles' dismay. However, they become dehydrated and hallucinate from drinking seawater, leading to a chaotic and surreal experience. In their hallucinations, they see Candied Island sinking and various bizarre sights. Eventually, Bubby rescues them and brings them back to the dock. Flapjack apologizes to Bubby for not listening and gives him a W for his compass. Flapjack thanks Knuckles for the West birthday present, despite Knuckles selling the compass for maple syrup. Flapjack, Bubby, and Knuckles are fleeing from 8-armed Willy when Bubby crashes, sending Flapjack and Knuckles flying into a chaotic encounter with the moon. The moon rises and separates the trio until the next day. Knuckles, ever the schemer, convinces the moon that he is its king and that it should carry them to Candied Island. The moon's erratic attempts to locate the island cause mayhem, sinking boats and overwhelming islands. This destruction eventually catches the attention of Poseidon, who confronts the moon. Poseidon asserts that there is no Moon King and instructs the moon to move only up or down. The moon, angered by Knuckles getting him into trouble, refuses to take them any further. Flapjack and Knuckles spot Candied Island in the distance, but Flapjack is hesitant to leave the moon, fearing that he might miss reuniting with Bubby. In a bold decision, Knuckles decides to make the duo jump toward the island. However, they are both held back by the moon's gravitational pull. Flapjack manages to taste Candied Island with his saliva before being pulled back to the moon, and even though he never got a chance to stay, at least he knows it is a real place. In the final episode of The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, Flapjack and Knuckles initially try to peppermint Larry's new drink, the 1,000 Pieces of Candy, and they become enthralled by it. However, they're shocked to learn the rule is one per customer forever when they try to get more. With determination and a series of disguises, they manage to taste the candy multiple times, defying Bubby's warning that consuming too much candy will turn them into fish. The consequences soon catch up with them as they indeed transform into fish the following day and are chased out of Stormalong. While wandering in the ocean, they discover the candy coral, but the fish inhabitants label them freaks for not eating candy. Mermen rescue them, mistaking them for mermen, and attempt to help them overcome their candy addiction. After a prolonged effort, they succeed, but removing their shirts reveals they've fully transformed into fish due to the fish flu, a result of improper use. The doctor treats them and they regain their human forms, returning to Stormalong. They continue their quest for more candy, donning fake mustaches, but are caught up by Peppermint Larry. Instead of turning them into fish, he reveals the true consequence. They become live-action versions of themselves. Once again, they are banished from Stormalong, with the series ending as they sail away on Bubby, who now has a human face because of consuming too much candy during their absence, in search of a new home. So, one intriguing fan theory about the Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack suggests that the entire series might take place within Flapjack's mind, essentially being a manifestation of his internal struggles and imagination. In this theory, Flapjack is portrayed as a young boy dealing with isolation and loneliness in the strange and often dark world of Stormalong Harbor. The bizarre characters he encounters, such as Captain Knuckles and the numerous grotesque beings, represent different facets of his personality and emotions. For instance, Captain Knuckles could symbolize Flapjack's desire for adventure and a father figure, while the weird and sometimes terrifying creatures he encounters might represent his anxieties and fears. The endless quest for Candied Island, a place of seemingly unattainable happiness and sweetness, could be seen as a metaphor for Flapjack's pursuit of a better life or an escape from his everyday troubles. Throughout the series, viewers observe Flapjack's internal struggles and conflicts being played out through his interactions and adventures. The weird and dark humor that characterizes the show might symbolize Flapjack's way of coping with his inner demons and making sense of a challenging world. This theory provides a way to interpret the show's surreal and sometimes unsettling events as a reflection of Flapjack's psychological journey, adding a layer of depth to the series and its exploration of themes related to growing up and facing life's challenges. However, it's essential to remember that this is just a fan theory, and the show's creators have not officially confirmed or denied this interpretation. This show is a uniquely eccentric and darkly comedic animated series that has garnered a dedicated following for its distinctive style and storytelling. The show seamlessly blends dark and absurd humor, often venturing into bizarre and grotesque situations, along with hints of body horror. Its highly memorable art style contributes significantly to its charm. Character designs are intentionally exaggerated, featuring comically oversized facial features and unconventional proportions, creating a cast that's both visually quirky and unforgettable. The distorted and surreal world of Stormalong Harbor further enhances the show's unpredictably dreamlike atmosphere, accentuated by unconventional and vibrant color choices. The series unapologetically delves into creepy and grotesque elements, but presents them in a humorous and cartoonish fashion. Despite the unconventional character designs, the animation is remarkably detailed and expressive, amplifying the visual humor. In summary, Flapjack distinguishes itself from traditional animated series through its remarkable fusion of bizarre artistry and offbeat humor, making it a standout in the world of cartoons. So, this was the marvelous misadventures of Flapjack from beginning to the end. What do you think? Which part of it did you enjoy the most? Let us know down in the comments, and as for everything else, drop us a like and subscribe to Cartoon Mania